Hi there, Glocal citizens. Welcome back to the podcast that inspires a borderless mindset around manifesting a new world. I am your host, Florence Adu, coming to you from Accra. And I'm on my way to another new place where my guest and I last year, about this time, were having an awesome time in Kenya. So that's where I'm off to. So you'll be hearing a lot of talks and information from Kenya within the next couple months. And so, yeah, I'm just excited, just ready to get going. And let's get to her bio and get into the conversation. She is Chief Operating Officer of CoinCoin and CEO and Country Manager of CoinCoin Ghana Limited, a leading African digital asset exchange. Recognized as one of Africa's top Fintech Voices, she has shaped policy discourse at UK Parliamentary Summits, Financial Times live events, and African Fintech Summits. She champions financial inclusion, women's leadership in fintech, and regulatory frameworks that position Africa as a pioneer in the global digital economy, building infrastructure that empowers individuals and businesses to access decentralized finance. Mimi Kufuor, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Florence. It's such a pleasure to be on here talking to you. I know I've heard so much about your podcast. So yeah, I'm eager for us to get chatting.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So let's get started. The first question I always ask is, where are you from? Where are you local? And what is your craft?
So where am I from it's always a difficult question to answer. I'm originally Ghanaian, so I'm from Ghana, but I've spent a lot of time in the UK. But of course, I'm also of mixed heritage. So my mother is half British, half Ghanaian. So London should really feel like home, but sadly, it doesn't really. I think I'm deeply rooted to Ghana. So I guess I'd say I'm from Ghana and I'm Ghanaian with a sprinkle of British.
Okay.
So local is obviously London in the United Kingdom and my craft. So I guess you could say I run a fintech startup. So yeah, a digital assets exchange for Africans. So it's basically a crypto exchange similar to, I guess, the ones everyone's really familiar with would be like Binance or Coinbase, but focused primarily on Africa.
Okay. So how does a young lady that is Ghanaian with a sprinkle of British, how does she find herself in that craft? So tell us about the journey to understanding and wanting to be in the fintech space.
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say my background is a sort of direct correlation because people in fintech come from different backgrounds. But I think for me, it's definitely a bit more of a relevant journey. I studied financial economics at the University of Leicester, graduated with a first class degree, and then I got into investment banking. And I was in investment banking for, God knows, over 10, 15 years, can't even remember now, just doing various sort of consultation roles, contracting for various banks. So your likes of HSBC, Barclays, BlackRock, these just the usual banks. And I did that for a while. And then it sort of hit lockdown where the contracting market in London had kind of dried up and the regulations were changing. So I was out of a contract and I had to join, I think it was Bank of America at the time, remotely. And that was probably like, I hate to say this, but it wasn't a great experience. My manager was a bully, and I'm sure if he ever listened to this, he'll deny this. But anyways, I was in a situation where I was just not happy. And then I met Ifia at a dinner party. Now, Ifia is a mutual friend of Florence and I. I met her at a friend's 40th birthday, and she was working at Meta, Facebook back then, when it was called Facebook at the time. And she was like, "Oh, we're hiring." And I was like, "Oh my God, I should apply." So got my CV together, applied, managed to bag the role, which was amazing. And then, yeah, I sort of jumped into the world of technology, which was amazing. It was great, working with Ifia, obviously being a friend and just trying to understand the world of tech as well. So that kind of gave me good grounding. And as you know, Facebook was going through, I think they had just had the name change at the time, and they were going through a whole bunch of layoffs and stuff. And I got caught up in that at the tail end. And a really good friend of mine who I'd been working in banking with, he had left banking a couple of years prior and set up his own sort of outfit, I guess a fintech. And he was looking for someone senior to join the team. And he'd been trying to poach me for a while, granted. But I was always like, oh, I'm not sure if I want to, take the risk and all of that. But I guess it just, the stars aligned. It seemed like a great time to make that move and explore, something different. So yeah, so that's how I got into it. And I think for me, my career ambitions were to sort of do something that gave me the autonomy, that kind of gave me that entrepreneurial opportunity, and something that kind of gives you a little bit of a creative outlet and control over your own future. And I think, it all kind of pieced together very nicely. And I've been there for close to 3 years now. So yeah, there's no turning back.
Right. You're on that startup train.
Yeah.
So you kind of hinted at this, but I always ask the question, why the where? How did you come to be living, working, and playing where you are? And you kind of hinted at that. But I want to dig deeper into your local in London and obviously your local in Ghana. And then why the where of more about why you chose this opportunity. It chose you to some extent, but why you exactly chose it.
So I think, I knew the founder and the owner, so that made it a very easy choice. But in terms of trajectory, it'll be something of my own. I was coming on as a C-suite executive. And, there's just so much more opportunity being able to run your own business and company. And, he gave me an equity stake in the business. So I did feel like I was truly part of the business and making real decisions. And yeah, it was obviously still finance related as well, because I come from a traditional finance background. So for me, it made sense. It played to my strengths, and it gave an opportunity for a lot of growth, which was what really appealed to me. As soon as I joined, I started an executive leadership course at INSEAD, a COO course, COO leadership course. And that was fantastic. And I think, that really kind of gave me the confidence and gave me the sort of knowledge and sort of kind of just foundations that I needed to really succeed in the world. So yeah, I think it was a great decision, and I continue to think it's a great decision. So
yeah. We love it. We love to see women in these traditionally male dominated fields. And then so let's go back to your local. So let's learn a little bit more about what is your London? London's a big city. There's a lot of places. So what is your local in London? And then when you're in Ghana, where is your local in Ghana? Or you're, from?
Yeah. So in London, I live in Old Street. Not too many people are familiar with it. It's very close to Shoreditch or Angel or King's Cross. It's not too far from the city where all the investment banks are. So Liverpool Street, Moorgate. So I'm kind of smack bang in the middle of the city, you could say. I'm very central. And when I'm in Accra, I am in East Legon with that's where my mom lives. So yeah, East Legon is a little more commercial now, sadly. But when we moved there when I was younger, it was very residential. But now, yeah, it's become this big commercial place. But at least the roads are better. So it gives better access. Yeah. But you're still sat in traffic for ages, which is a bit annoying. But, I like East Legon's my hood. Let's put it that way.
Okay. When you talk about your heritage a little bit deeper, so being from the UK, your mother, where in the UK is your mother from, and where in Ghana are both of your parents' roots?
So my mom, I know she was born in Paddington, but
okay.
I'm not entirely sure what my grandmother. I know she used to live coincidentally in Leicester, but where in the UK she's actually from, I couldn't say. My mom sort of, when she was younger, lived in London with her mom and her two brothers and stuff. My granddad, actually, interesting story, was a stowaway from Ghana. So he came to the UK on a ship and, obviously stowed away, settled in London, and met my grandmother and, got married and had kids. And then they moved back to Ghana. But of course, my grandmother didn't like it because back in the 60s or 50s, whenever it was they went, it wasn't very progressive. And my granddad was a cobbler, so he didn't have a lot of money. And so, a Caucasian woman boarding a local trotro bus in Ghana was confusing to everyone, probably for my grandmother too. So she was like, yeah, I'm out. I can't do this. So she moved back. she moved back to London with my mom's two youngest brothers. My mom was a little bit older, so she stayed with her dad, my granddad, and, met my dad and then had kids, and, the rest is history. But yeah, my mom, I guess for all intents and purposes, kind of grew up in London at some point when she was younger. She did, before they moved to Ghana, they lived in London. So yeah. And my mom is of Ashanti descent, same as my dad. So they're both Ashantis. Yeah.
Okay.
Apart from the sprinkle of British in my mom, yeah, she's Ashanti. So,
well, that's such an interesting story. Stowed away in the 60s.
Yeah, it was crazy. And at the time, I mean, marrying a black man, well, even just being seen with a black man would have been so taboo. But she's clearly a rebel. So
right, exactly. I mean, some of those pioneering roots have trickled down into granddaughter in terms of pioneering in a space that Africans are kind of novice in. So let's dive into a little bit more about what exactly CoinCoin's solution is, right? So what is the problem that you are attempting to solve with this product?
So, as I said, it's a crypto exchange. So you can buy and sell digital assets on our platform. And I think for us, really, it's just about wealth creation and financial inclusion. As you know, in Africa, a vast majority of people are unbanked. Digital assets is very much built on the basis of decentralization. So there's no control. There's no centralized power. You have control over your own money. It gives you the opportunity to invest and access basically money in fractional portions. If you look at Bitcoin, you don't have to buy the whole Bitcoin. You can buy a piece of Bitcoin. And given the sort of, sticky inflation, FX fluctuations, I think Africa just needed an alternative. And especially for remittances, we send a lot of money back home and it takes ages and obviously just costs a fortune. So I think for us, really, it was just about wealth creation and financial inclusion in being able to serve that African market and giving people the alternative to your traditional monetary systems that just were failing us. With mobile money being the sort of pioneering infrastructure when it comes to access to money on the ground, especially for people, even, the unbanked and people in remote areas. This is just an extension of that, really. The idea really is for people to be able to use mobile money to come onto the platform, buy the necessary digital assets that they need, and then, come back out of these digital assets into local currency, again, via Momo or their local bank accounts. And that really just gives people the opportunity to save, to store, keep the value of their money in something that's more stable, like Bitcoin or stable coins. And it just gives people access also to international markets, which they were previously locked out of. So it's access to a lot of liquidity, access to finance, access to assets, access to everything. And even when you look at tokenization, which is basically creating a token out of real world assets. So let's say if you have a house, for example, you can tokenize it, and then basically people can invest in that house in, little portions that they can afford. So they don't have to buy a whole token. They can just buy a portion of it. But then they basically own a part of that house that's maybe in a prime area like Osu, Airport Hills, which ordinarily you wouldn't even have access to. I mean, we all know how crazy the prices of land is in Ghana. Don't even know how they price it or how they come about the pricing, but hey ho. But, if someone was to tokenize a plot of land, then it means people could have access to that and their money would grow exponentially from, buying a token of that land. And it's safe, it's secure, it's blockchain. The entries are not reversible. No one can go in and change it, which is exactly why people really trust in Bitcoin, just based on the foundations of the fact that it's decentralized. It's not owned by anyone. No one controls it. It's controlled by a consensus of computers across, basically globally. So it just makes it really safe and secure. And you can't reverse any transactions. It's immutable. You can't say, oh, actually, I've made a mistake. Let me go back. And actually, of late, I've been doing some educational material on my Instagram on sort of blockchain, on digital assets, and, just trying to educate people on what it is and what it's not, and, the myths and the truths behind it, to really demystify digital assets for people. So people feel like they too have a seat at the table when they're talking about digital assets, at least so that they know the fundamentals when people, throw around all these acronyms and buzzwords, because it's kind of come from a sort of tech bro space where you think everyone's mining Bitcoin, or, everyone has this sort of technical background, because yes, the vast majority of the people who initially got into it were probably very tech savvy. But, I think it's matured to a point where it's solving for such real and basic needs in Africa that I think everyone needs to just really educate themselves on the fundamentals and just really understand what it is, why it's useful, and why it's the future of money, essentially. So yeah, I'm really enjoying kind of giving people that knowledge, and just sharing what I know and what I'm seeing on the ground in Africa, particularly.
Yeah, I was listening to the radio earlier this morning, and the conversation was very insightful. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. The conversation was around this consolidation of currencies. So you have the euro, which is struggling, right, in the face of what's going on with the European economies. And there have always been these calls for, how do we get Africa together? Should we have a single currency and that type of thing? And his thought is, no, we should not have a single currency. That doesn't make any sense. So with regard to how digital assets but in the context of the reason why people would even want to have one currency, would you say that that is what the point is of digital assets, so that we don't have to think about, okay, let's all have a euro, let's keep our currencies, but because we have these digital assets, the valuations can be more fluid, or we can trade more easily? How do you think that works?
I think that's an interesting question. I mean, obviously, if you're sort of Pan-African, you would probably want a single currency. And I think that's what some of our forefathers, Nkrumah and Gaddafi and, the likes of those people were trying to achieve. But I think we're too far gone, maybe in the maturity of a lot of our financial and economic systems for that to become a reality. But I don't think that stops us from being unified. Obviously, Africa is very fragmented. There are at least over 42 currencies within Africa, which is, it's crazy. And it's crazy, and it's prohibitive for trade, obviously. But I don't necessarily think one currency will solve all our problems, really, because there are a lot of countries within Africa. So I think what we really need to do is kind of, I think and the thing is, each country, even if you look at it from north, even the regions from north to south to east to west, we have such differing and varying cultures across the continent. And I think each country just needs to look at, what they're trying to achieve, and what's their strong suits and what's their weak points, and do they need more exports, or, things like that. So I think each country basically just needs to decide what works for them. But I think what is interesting about digital assets is the fact that it makes settlement quicker and easier, and it makes it cheaper. So from a cross-border perspective, it also means trade will be easier across each country. So I don't necessarily think we need one currency. I think once there is an easy way to trade across the borders, then that makes it, I think then that should be fine. A lot of people have talked about, creating some sort of gold token, which could then be the universal kind of standard across Africa. But then that too kind of comes with its challenges, because gold is obviously priced in dollars. So then, it kind of, you're going back to the dollar problem, or the dollarization problem. But of course, if you kind of price gold in sort of local currency, and you between the countries, you agree on what the value is, or you set it based on a basket of goods. So it's gold, it's silver, it's cocoa, whatever it is. And then you price that as a unit, or you give it a sort of measure. You agree a unit of measure for it, then that kind of also helps. But of course, there's so many varying challenges. Even if you did use gold, you'd have to look at the quality of gold that's being used. that has to be standardized across each country. Someone needs to audit the gold to make sure that the gold actually exists. So there's a lot of things there. But I think the first step really is the fact that the African continent is very youth dominant. We are tech savvy, mobile money forward. So I think for us, really, that's where we need to start. We need to start from using our strengths and being able to build from that. And I think, if you look at it, there's a lot of grassroots adoption of digital assets across the continent because of these factors. Because we are sort of youth dominant, the youth they're obviously very tech savvy and they're using a lot of the technology to be able to transact in digital assets. A lot of the transaction value is $1,000 or below. So you can see it's a real grassroots adoption. So I think for us, really, the key is just to take mobile money a step further, expand on that, build rails and APIs on top of the mobile money network that exists already, which will then just help us use digital assets in line with mobile money to help us to trade with one another with ease at a low cost and quickly. I think that's truly what's going to unlock the potential within Africa. Nigeria, obviously, is one of the biggest adopters of digital assets across Africa and globally as well. There's a real opportunity for us to reset this sort of neo-colonialism that we've been living in, I think. So for me, digital assets really presents that opportunity. I mean, of course, from an infrastructure perspective, I think we have all we need. I think it's more just upskilling and training people to be able to build the infrastructure. And I think it's good if we are able to partner with, companies in the West that have obviously got more capital and being able to build some of the infrastructure, but we just need to partner with them. We don't need them to come in and, take over the market share. And I think that's really where the distinction should lie. Because, at the end of the day, no one's an island. We do need to collaborate and work together. And digital assets isn't just revolutionary in Africa. It is across the globe. America's, with Trump coming into power, he wants to make America the sort of crypto capital of the world. So digital assets is the future of money. It's here. And I think we need to look at what we can do as Africans to really just push the envelope and helping ourselves to understand it, we're already using it at a sort of a high level. There's a lot of people across Africa, South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, Ghana, you name it, using digital assets already. The regulation is also catching up, so that's great. People feel a lot more confident and secure using exchanges and trading in crypto and digital assets. So I think the landscape is changing. It's going in a very positive direction. And we have so many unicorn fintech companies coming out of Africa. So I have no doubt that we will be able to build the infrastructure we need. I think what I would like to see more of is just capital coming from within Africa, financing some of these projects. A lot of the unicorns have been VCs from Silicon Valley and what have you. But we really need, I think, local sort of venture capitalists and local capital to really fund some of these projects. And we have it, we do have it. And I think maybe there's a hesitancy or there is a lack of knowledge in terms of digital assets and, the true opportunity there, which is maybe holding some of the investors back. But I think hopefully that will change in the next couple of years as the regulation also progresses globally. People will just have a bit more confidence, especially from an investor perspective, knowing that these things have been written into law. The guidelines are clear. There's recourse and the repercussions for bad actors, so it'll definitely instill a lot of confidence in investors, I think, knowing that, if the next government comes into power, it's not going to be rolled back and their money is going to sort of disappear. Their investment is going to disappear. So I think it's kind of, everything's moving hand in hand as it should. And we'll get there. But it's an exciting future for us, particularly because there's just a real opportunity to reset things and just really, take control of our power, our resources. And I mean, as a continent, we are probably one of the most resource-rich continent. We have it all. We have the food. We have the metals in the ground. We have a lot that we can use and not have to depend on anyone else, really. So yeah.
Right. So I want to pick up on where you said this is kind of the extension of mobile money, because that is a challenge, right? So when I go to another country, I have my Momo, and then if I can't get a SIM card there to then be able to activate another account, I'm relying on a bank that just may not even have the same exchange gateway. So it's just a whole mess. So I get that's what I'm hearing is what you're providing. So if I have my CoinCoin wallet, I'm going to go, if I go to Togo and they have whatever their mobile platform is, I can pick money from my Momo and then somehow translate that into their Momo and then be able to make payments. Is that the idea?
Yes, exactly. So how it would work is you would obviously, as an exchange, we would use, you may or may, depending on how it's set up from a technical perspective, you may or may not see it, but we'll use a payment service platform to facilitate those payments in and out of Momo. So someone would come onto our platform. We would have the PSP underneath, which would accept, which would basically allow people to transfer their Momo onto our platform. They can then sort of buy a stable coin. They can buy Bitcoin. They can buy whatever digital asset they need. They can then travel to Kenya. They can then travel to Togo, travel wherever they want across Africa. And as long as the person on the receiving end also has another sort of digital asset wallet, then you're able to, transact via that means. So that's basically, and there are also a lot of PSPs that are offering, sort of the stable coin wallets and being able to kind of do that translation for you. So even if you did go to a different country and you only had cities in your bank account, you should still be able to do that. Basically, the plumbing that works underneath would be the translation of your local currency into a stable coin, and then the stable coin back into the local currency of wherever you're buying the item in. So it should all work kind of inconspicuously. So to you, you just think you're just giving up your mobile money, or converting your mobile money, or you're just using your card. And I think that's kind of where things are going now. A lot of the PSPs in Africa are trying to work with stablecoin issuers so that can be integrated into their systems and offerings. So yeah, that's kind of where it's going. I also know Momo has also piloted a sort of Ghana to Nigeria system where you can basically use your Ghanaian Momo account in Nigeria to pay for something, and then they convert from cities to Naira as well. So hopefully that will be an option across many different countries, in addition to, being able to use digital assets as well. So there'll be a lot more alternatives coming up.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. For our listeners who don't know what a PSP is, what is a PSP?
So it's a payment service platform. So if you're familiar, if you live in Ghana, if you've heard of Express Pay, there's Flutterwave, there's ZPay. I mean, there's so many of them. I can't, sort of name all of them off the top of my head, but they basically just facilitate payments from your local bank accounts, your, sort of Momo accounts, and paying for utility bills, paying for things, sort of locally. It's a platform that basically takes your money and facilitates those payments on your behalf. So I'm not sure if they do it for international cards. I think ExpressPay used to. I don't know if they still.
Yeah, they do actually.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So even if you have an international card, you can, use your pound or your US dollar to then pay someone's Momo account as well, or pay someone's water bill in Ghana. And they basically facilitate those payments on your behalf.
Right. Another semi-technical question. So if you are not technical, but more operations in business. So as a business, you're providing this service. It's great. It's kind of in the finance space. How does revenue come to CoinCoin? Banks make their money off of fees. Telcos make their money off of fees. How does CoinCoin hit revenue positive?
It'll be similar. So in order for anyone to use our platform, there'll be some sort of transaction fee that we charge.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a similar business model.
Very similar. And so to the extent that you're in the early phases, there's not a lot of competition quite yet. But when you think about who your competition is now in this space, how would you categorize them?
So there actually are a lot of exchanges running across Nigeria and Ghana as the regulation develops. But I guess it's all kind of underground. So I wouldn't want to go into naming any other competitors because technically, the regulation has only gone live, but, some of these companies have been operating, I guess, undercover. But, this is the issue with slow regulation and over-regulation as well, because when regulation's slow to catch up, there will be underground players because people are demanding those services. People want to be able to, bypass inflation. They want a good, stable store of value for their money and their savings. So the next best thing is to, find a company that does that. And some of the international bigger players have also operated within the African space, again, undercover. So this is what happens. You then just push people to kind of go into the black markets to, operate without licenses. And then when you have over-regulation where the regulation is too strict and it's not proportionate, again, that just pushes players deeper into the underground market, which is not what we want. So I think, now, obviously, Ghana has legislated a Virtual Asset Service Provider Act into law. So that's great. And I think there's a path where people who are already operational can then, come into being licensed by the regulators. So there's a clear path for people already operating. There's a path for people who are not operational yet also to get the license. And in Kenya and South Africa, they already have regulations in place. And I think Nigeria does also, but they've been slow to license some of the players in the markets. But hopefully they'll be catching up soon as well. But yeah, I think, the regulatory landscape is moving and progressing. And hopefully, there will be some sort of, I guess, list once the licensing regime happens that will be published by the Bank of Ghana and the SEC so that people know the players that have been, licensed to operate. But at this point, anyone operating is doing it sort of undercover. Not to say, they don't have billboards in Accra. They probably do, but I'd rather not mention any names,
right.
But
right. I remember when you were going, it was a long process. Yeah, I remember when you were going through that process. It was a long process. Yeah.
Yeah. We're still going through it. We have no one's been licensed yet. There's a sandbox that people need to be a part of before they get licensed. So so we're all just going through the process now.
Okay. Wow. So interesting. So to that point, you said there's a lot of words that people need to get up to speed on. So I want to ask you, what is your Glocal speak? So this is a word, a phrase, or a saying that is a meaningful part of your local experience and why or how you value it as Glocal speak.
Oh gosh. I would say a word that comes to mind for me, just based on my personal lived life, would be pivot. I feel like for me, I'm always kind of, I live in London, I live in Ghana, and I'm always having to, pivot and make sort of room for both parts of my life. I'm always thinking of like, what's next for me? When I come back to London, it's like, oh, okay, what do I have on my plate now? And what are my next, few weeks looking like? And when I go to Ghana, it's similar. I'm there for a period of time. And then it's like, what's next for me? So I think I've also kind of grown up in that environment because my dad was a diplomat and an ambassador. So we lived in New York for about 6 years when I was younger, and then moved back to Ghana, and then I moved to London. So for me, I've always had to sort of pivot and, make the most of the opportunities around me. So yeah, I think that's the word I would choose. Say pivot. Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. So back to the business, because now I can't have a conversation with anyone in tech without asking them about AI. And so I want to kind of understand two things. One is because AI is such a huge environmental burden, so to speak, right? The infrastructure for AI is these data centers that take a lot of energy and a lot of water, and most of them are offshore, right? So they're not in Africa. So I want to understand from you, what does that actual tech physical infrastructure look like for running your operation? And what would be the most ideal scenario? And then in terms of human capital, or the workforce that then becomes part of what you're doing? What does that look like? And how, is it AI people or is it people, let's talk about that a little bit.
I think for us, we would definitely need bums on seats. Obviously, it wouldn't be as intense as, like a call center or something. Like we definitely need some C-suite executives, obviously, from an operations perspective. And we'll need people like a compliance officer and things like that. But we'll definitely need people, obviously, to build up a team and, just truly have a global business. I don't necessarily think AI would replace any of the people that we would look to hire, because we would need technical people. And yes, of course, AI can do some of the technical roles, but when you're running an exchange, you do need people who are support, customer service, and things like that. But to the extent that obviously things can be streamlined, with a lot of even the Zen desks that they have with some of these online companies, it's all run by AI, but there's only so much AI can do as well. I don't think we're really at the point where AI is getting rid of human capital. So I think for us, we'll definitely need to hire people and grow the business with human, sort of using, bums on seat human capital. So that's a good thing. I think where AI will be helpful for us is, just giving certain functionality and features to users that, are innovative, sort of trading signals, gaming, that sort of thing. I think that's where it'll be helpful for our users. And just, I guess, streamlining customer service and response times and things like that, but also automating reports and audits and things like that, that would need to go to the regulators. That's where it'll really help us in terms of compliance reporting and things like that. So, we won't do away with having people in the office and hiring people, but it will streamline operations hugely, which is exciting. I think, obviously it also makes people's lives a lot easier, and it makes it a lot easier to manage things when things are automated. And, if someone on the platform's trying to do something illegally, it'll automatically be flagged up. AI would, catch it instantly. So it makes things a lot easier, but I don't think it completely does away with human capital. I think for us, it is still important.
Right. How about the hardware of your operation and, that kind of data backbone and that type of thing? How are you all thinking about that?
We've engaged with a company that provides our tech. So it's a third-party supplier. So they do all the sort of technical software stuff where they're based in Singapore. Locally, of course, we'll have to have some servers to sort of set up the operations, but it's not, it's not going to be super intensive. It's not like we're mining Bitcoin and we need so much energy and stuff. Yeah, it's nothing like that. We won't be mining.
It's normal.
Yeah, we won't be mining any coins per se or anything like that. It'll just be sort of the service that we need on ground to service each country's need. So yeah.
Okay. That's easy. That makes it much lighter, right? When we think about the grand scheme of how do you make this a fluid type of operation.
But there are loads of data centers in Ghana and Nigeria as well. So for me, I'm not worried about any of the technical side of things. I think it should be fine.
Okay, cool. So thinking about mindset. So I want to ask you about my mindset hack. How do you hack your mindset? How do you get in the zone? What do you do?
So I am not big on meditation, contrary to popular belief where everyone's into, meditating. I think I always have something on my mind. So I find it hard to focus on one thing and meditate, although I'm sure it's helpful. I think for me, I like sort of to-do lists. So if I have a lot of things to do, I know it sounds very, very rudimentary, but I'm a to-do lister. So I will just get pen to paper. I also have a photographic memory, so I guess that helps. So whatever I put on paper, I can almost visualize even if I'm not next to the piece of paper. So for me, that really works. I think for me, that's my biggest mind hack. If I put pen to paper and do a to-do list, it just helps me organize my mind and organize my day. And I guess it's in a way, it's a way of like manifesting what you need and what you want and what you're going to do. And, I'm a big believer in manifestation as well. So being able to put pen to paper and write things down as a to-do list, I think helps me kind of channel my energy and channel my thoughts towards what I want and towards the things that I want to achieve.
Good. Right. Seeing it makes it real.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So where is Coin in 5 years?
It would be the biggest African crypto exchange on the continent.
I love it.
Uh, yeah, that's the hope and that's the dream. So we're working hard towards that. It'll be, your go-to platform. It'll be the household name that everyone knows and loves. Yeah, so that's the hope and messaging. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Please send me coin. Let's coin up.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it'll be street talk,
Yeah, exactly.
It'll be street talk.
Which is cool because it makes, it's a good name. So
yes, it's a very catchy
that in
name.
itself. Yeah, that in itself is very scalable in the mindset of many who speak other languages. So that's always nice to know. So maybe I want to let's pivot a little bit and find out who you are when you're not working or being a startup boss. And so I typically ask if you're a reader, a watcher, or a listener, and what are some of your favorite reads, watches, or listens, or what else do you do in your off the clock time?
I am definitely a reader. So I love to read. Of late, I haven't been able to read a lot of books. I read more sort of like news and what's happening and, kind of keeping breast in terms of like industry insights and stuff like that. So I read more newsletters, stuff like that. But I think my favorite book of all time is The Alchemist. I'm sure everyone's familiar with that book.
I reread that last year.
Yeah. So what's it by Paulo Coelho? I think it was Coelho. That's how you pronounce his name. He's a great writer, and I love the book The Alchemist. Again, that book is very much based on manifestation and what's meant for you will be, that kind of thing. And I'm a true believer in that. So that's like my favorite book of all time. I also recently read Chimamanda book, The Dream Count. I think that's her latest.
Yep.
Her latest book. That was really fantastic. I really, really got lost in that. And that's fiction, but that was really, really, really good.
That's a good one.
But aside from that, in my spare time, I like to stay fit, go to the gym. I love running. I find it very therapeutic, helps me clear my mind. Obviously not in the cold, but when it's a bit warmer or when I'm back in Ghana, in Ghana it's too hot to run during the day, but, just go to the gym and, run and work out. I'm also big on African art. So I love going to galleries or art shows. Yeah. And I'm a collector as well. So there's that. And I love the theater. I love African theater. I love theater in general. I studied literature at school. So I'm big on Shakespeare, and I just love anything that has to do with theater. So yeah, that's kind of what I do in my spare time when I can. Like if there's any good theater shows on, I try and, catch them when I'm in London or wherever I am, really. So yeah.
Speaking of art, are there any particular artists that you're following or collecting or looking at their works as of late?
A lot of the big names I obviously cannot afford. I tend to when I'm in Ghana, I always go to Gallery 1957. They do really great pieces there. There's no one particularly that I'm following, but I think generally there are a lot of African artists in Nigeria and Ghana that are not super well known or no one knows their names or anything. But for me, it's kind of whatever speaks to me when I see it, whatever I connect with and whatever resonates with me. I recently went to a show actually by a guy called Kweku Yaro, and he uses the Ghana Must Go bags to create art on basically mats, the sort of traditional mats that you probably find in the north where they use it to, I guess the Northerners use it to pray and stuff. So that was really interesting. And that was quite fascinating. I've also commissioned pieces with a local artist in Ghana called Edward Larby, who's really good. He uses broomsticks to do sort of portrait style pieces. So it's kind of mixed media art. So yeah, I'm into various different things, different artists, just really what speaks to me. And I think for me, I like supporting local artists in Ghana, particularly, and Nigeria, just across Africa. If I I didn't buy any pieces in Kenya, but they had amazing pieces. But when I've been to South Africa, I bought, some stuff off the street from, someone who's probably not known, type thing. So it's just wherever I go, I try and collect a piece. But yeah, actually, Kenya, I didn't buy anything. Or did I? No, I didn't.
Not art.
No, not art.
Yeah.
I didn't buy any art. I bought, other stuff. But yeah, I need to go back. I love Kenya. Kenya's great.
Yes.
Super jealous that you're going. Yeah.
I'm really excited. And I love these art tips. These are great. And I like that you said that you commission work from artists, because that's also how they survive. Is that people see them and see their work. And I love going to studios, because then you get to know how they produce and that type of thing. So yeah, thanks for that. Those are great tips and it's great info.
Great.
Yay. So Mimi, our days are moving on. So I want to be conscious of that. And before we go today, I want to thank you so much for joining us. And we're just looking forward to the day when Coin will be in our wallets.
Listen, you will blink and it's happening. You won't know what
there.
Hit you.
Yes, indeed. And so before we go, do you have any last thoughts you'd like to share with our listeners?
I would say that in life, authenticity is key. I think, no matter what journey or path your life takes you on, you should always be true to yourself. Don't just go with what the world expects of you. Be true to who you are, be true to your passions, be true to what you want out of life, and the universe will meet you there. Those are my parting words.
I love it. Awesome. All right, Glocal citizens, this has been another episode of the podcast. You can catch us Tuesdays with new episodes at glocalcitizenspod.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Please do like, share, subscribe, leave us a review, tell a friend, go back and listen to our entire library when you have a chance. You could listen to an episode almost every day of the year. Isn't that lovely? And of course, listen to this one. So until next time, check out the show notes. That's another thing. And until next time, bye for now.